Britannia lifted off from Bristol's Filton Aerodrome. Designed by the Bristol Aeroplane Company, it was the world's first long-range airliner powered by turboprop engines. It finally went into service in 1957 and it earned itself the nickname the Whispering Giant because it was so quiet. Well, today there was a special trip to Cotswold Airport at Kemble to celebrate this anniversary. Ali Vowles was there.
It was quite a celebration of all things Bristol, as enthusiasts arrived at Kemble aboard Bristol buses and in Bristol-made cars. It was a fundraiser with a difference, and everyone was keen to get on board and share memories.
It's been fantastic. I mean, to arrive here on the vintage buses, it's incredible to sort of see all the planes just lined up and everybody.
They called it the Whispering Giant because it was so quiet.
I was just so excited. That was just my first flight.
And the last time I flew this lovely girl was on the 2nd of October 1971. She was very pleasant once she was airborne. It could be a little bit difficult towards the last stage of the landing.
And it was a workhorse of the RAF, but also it was probably the plane that introduced the public to the package holiday in the 60s and 70s. A lot of people, their first look at the Mediterranean was after getting out of a Bristol Britannia.
The plane was the second the government had commissioned to be made at Filton post-World War II. 60,000 workers needed a new project. The Brabazon hadn't been successful, so there were many fingers crossed when the first test flight for the Britannia took place 70 years ago.
This is a great and historic day in the progress of the Britannia.
Well, I can only begin to imagine what it was like being the pilot on the maiden voyage. Not everything went quite to plan. Some of the controls were a bit oversensitive. There was smoke in the cockpit. And oh yes, the landing gear stuck. Thankfully, only for a short time.
The chief test pilot was Walter Gibbs, and today his daughters came along to celebrate their dad's achievement.
And I think his most memorable incident was once at 10,000 feet, it flipped. It dropped 5,000 feet, and what he said was he took what he'd done and reversed it, flipped the plane back the right way, and then it turned out that an obsolete part had been fitted, and that's why it happened. So that was quite an event.
How much did he tell you about these adventures?
He didn't seem to worry. No. He was a very relaxed person.
The plane is maintained by volunteers. Today's visit was organised by the Bristol Aero Collection Trust based at Filton, raising money to celebrate all of Bristol's aviation history. Ali Vowles, BBC Points West, Kemble.
That's my take home today. If it goes wrong, take what you've done and reverse it. Brilliant. Right, let's get our weather forecast.
Today to mark 70 years since the first flight of the Britannia.
The aircraft designed and built at Filton was the first long-haul passenger plane, but they're now extremely rare. Only 4 Britannias still exist, including the one at Kemble. Karen Bell has been taking a look around.
There was a definite 50s feel at Cotswold Airport today as fans gathered to celebrate one of the era's most famous planes. This is a Bristol Britannia, the first long-haul passenger plane ever built, and many people here have a special connection to it. In the cockpit, Charlotte and Alison Gibb, daughters of Wing Commander Walter Gibb, the Britannia's test pilot.
If you think that he flew this aeroplane all over the world, from the frozen north, Churchill, right down to Africa and to Australia. So it really is great to be here today to celebrate 70 years.
The Britannia was designed to take large numbers of people to the furthest corners of the Commonwealth. Built in Filton, it took its first flight 70 years ago today and paved the way for modern foreign tourism. But the Britannia's heyday was short. No sooner was it up and flying than Boeing came along with its jet aircraft, and suddenly the Britannia seemed old hat. Only 85 were ever built. This one at Kemble was the very last Britannia to fly. Its last flight was in 1997, and it's now one of just 4 that are left on display in the UK, allowing people the chance to explore it and sit in it. And I tell you what, the legroom isn't bad. There's even an at-seat ashtray. Flying it was rather more challenging. Of the 85 Britannias built, 14 crashed. Graham Rutledge flew them in the 70s and remembers every pilot's nightmare, cumulonimbus clouds.
They could be very, very scary indeed. And from the co-pilot seat, the way the radar was fitted in those days, I couldn't see the radar, which was picking out the thunderclouds and allowing the captain to weave his way between them. So all I could feel were the thumps and the bangs and the lightning and the St Elmo's fire on the outside of the windscreen.
Also at today's celebration, another man with reason to be nostalgic. This is Sir George White, great-grandson of the Sir George White who founded the Bristol Aeroplane Company, developers of the Britannia.
It was a magnificent aeroplane and it remains a magnificent aeroplane, and seeing it sitting here today is just a hugely pleasing sight.
It may be 25 years since a Britannia last flew, but in this corner of Gloucestershire, the memories live on. Karen Bell, ITV News, Cotswold Airport.
Oh, fascinating history, isn't it? 70 years.
Yeah, and to think, great to see so many people are still so passionate about it, but really harsh of Boeing to come along so quickly.
Yeah.
And corner the market.
Right, it's time to take a look at the forecast.